y Conaculta hace posible la Cátedra Berna. En esta sesión se enmarca en la tercera edición del Festival Internacional de Cine de la UNAM, Ficunam, y está dedicada enteramente a la crítica como una de sus formas de creación y relación artística entre creadores, lectores y público. Esta conferencia es presentada en colaboración con Ficunam y el MUAC, que hicieron posible que esté hoy aquí el maestro Jonas Mekas, que tengamos una exposición sobre su obra y una retrospectiva en el Festival Internacional de Cine Ficunam. Muchas gracias. Hoy recibimos con un gran honor en esta universidad al poeta de la imagen, cineasta lituano Jonas Mekas, responsable de haber abierto muchos caminos del cine independiente a través de ensayos, textos, publicaciones, colaboraciones colectivas y posturas individuales que lo hicieron ganar al cine como un documento personal y poético, a la vez que como un medio de comunicación social con la posibilidad de romper esquemas y fórmulas comerciales. Es el llamado padre del avant-garde. Conocemos. También está con nosotros Nicole Brenet, historiadora y crítica francesa, y para nosotros también es un gran honor que conduzca esta plática con el maestro Jonas Mekas. Le cedo la palabra a Nicole Brenet. Muchas gracias. Bienvenidos todos.
Thank you, Eva and the Ficunam for this wonderful moment. I will say a few words in English about Jonas. I will have the privilege to ask him some questions, but of course I will share this privilege and then it will be question from you, of course. So Jonas, as everyone knows here, is one of the greatest literary and visual poets in 2 languages, on 2 continents, and along 2 centuries. He lived and went through the most tragic events of the 20th century: World War II, occupation of his country, Lituania, imprisonment with his brother Adolfas by the Nazis in a forced labor camp in Elmsford, Germany in 1944, exile, poverty. But instead of despair, cynicism or selfishness, all his life, Jonas Mekas devoted his work to re-inject beauty, sincerity and happiness in the world. We can see 3 kinds of manifestations of such a work, and I love his costume of a worker today. First, his writings as a poet and film critic, who notably invented amazing free forms of criticism in the Village Voice during decades. This book that just has been newly published in Spanish right now. Among innumerous innovative and often funny examples, I wish to quote one of Jonas' thoughts that daily inspires me when I see industrial films. I call it the Cleopatra principle. So I'm quoting Jonas. Suppose I am the producer of Cleopatra. Suppose I have 40 million bucks. I would buy a huge lump of gold with that money. I would put that rock of gold in Radio City, and I would let anyone who wants to see it for $5. It would be the purest way of making money with money. Why go through all the trouble of making a movie? He wrote this in 1963. Secondly, of course, his films. Mainly visual diaries that transform phenomena into little fetishes. With Jonas' camera, things, creatures or circumstances appear like markers, places of celebration that spill everywhere the subjectivity of the person who apprehends them. Such a conception belongs to a history of forms that lead us from Dada to Fluxus, and from Monet to free jazz. This history that conceives art as the creative expansion of the possible relationships with the present. And thirdly, the collective institution he co-created in New York with Adolfas and his friends. The Filmmakers Cooperative, the Filmmakers Cinematheque, which eventually grew into Anthology Film Archives in 1964, and the great magazine Film Culture that shapes a new history of cinema, defending underground visual poets as Maya Deren, Stan Brakhage, Ken Jacobs, Paul Charis, Jack Smith, and so many others like Bruce Bay, Mary Menken, and so on. In each frame, each film, each institution he built, Jonas creates a present, preserving the infinite vibrations of the past, sharing, as he said, the beauty of being together, injecting happiness on earth, erecting polytopia, meaning many concrete utopias, in the forms of moments, institutions, visions, for him, for us, and for anyone. So we can say that Jonas' trajectory is a sublime example of humanity, in an old idealistic sense of this word, forged with simplicity, love, endless creativity. Personally, when I think to Jonas, I always have the images of Francesco and Gineppo, the overwhelming characters in Roberto Rossellini's The Flowers of St. Francis in 1950, figures of infinite respect for the living, absolute generosity, spreading their humility and the strength of love in the world. They defied tyranny, and they converted it thanks to their faith. In the case of Jonas, the faith, of course, is cinema, and the tyranny is capitalism, archetypes, ideology. And as Francis defended the poor, Jonas defended and created another history as a filmmaker, as a preservationist, as a curator, as a poet in everything. And this counter-history is the true history, and it will bury the industrial history under the weight of beauty and cleverness. I wish to end this introduction by saying that we can say to have lived part of our lives in the same time that Jonas, as the people who have embraced the same air than Francis or Leonardo da Vinci. And it's a pure joy to share some moments with him. So Jonas, please forgive me, because I know I'm hurting your modesty and simplicity. But that's something I'm thinking since I'm a cinephile, since I read your piece in the Village Voice and discovered notes on the circus and reminiscences of a journey to Lithuania. It was 35 years ago, so I hope you won't be angry, because your work is vital for me. Thank you, Jonas, from the bottom of my heart. I think this very nice applause means that we are agree. I'm just the voice for everybody in a way. So I have a few questions, and one of them is, how is it possible? From where comes such an energy?
I do not know. I cannot answer how it's possible, those things that are possible. I have no answers to why I do what I do. I have no answers. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but it was whatever I did with creation of all those institutions, film culture, there was always a necessity one thing I know, that I don't do anything unless there is a necessity and real strong, intense necessity. That does not permit me to escape. I have to do it because nobody else is doing it, and it has to be done. Nobody was writing, there was no publication. France had Cahiers du Cinéma, England had Sight and Sound. There was nothing in the United States and there were many of us who wanted to exchange ideas, to argue about cinema, some films. There was no platform. So that's how film culture came into existence, as a platform for. The same with the Village Voice. There was nobody, there was so much already happening, but nobody knew where you could see it or what was it. I had to step in and provide information and platform for an area of cinema that was totally ignored by all others who wrote at that time in various publications and newspapers on cinema. The same with the Cinematheque and Anthology, that when as time went, and already some early avant-garde, or what was known in those days as experimental film, some of it was already beginning to fall to dust and fade. Like it had to be preserved. There was a necessity. I have this like a weird necessity that if I see something that I like, that excites me, I have to share it with others. To see, even by myself, I'm not sure if I really enjoy even sunrise or the sunset. I have to exchange it with others. So that's what I guess is my necessity. If there is no necessity, why do it? Why you can just go to the lake, to sit on the bank of a river and just sit and look at the water. And why do anything? People are just too busy, I think. They do too much. I do only what's absolutely necessary. I came here because I thought I was told that I had to come here. And I'm very happy to be here. Even if Bergman looks like Lenin. Lenin and Trotsky and
My second question will be about your way of working about your films precisely. During your correspondence with Rosa Louise Guérin in 2010, you said, I will quote you, "Oh, all this business of reality, poetry, I'm not filming, I'm taping, video recording moments of life around me, friends in my own life, details that I really need to tape for whatever reason I do not know. I just have to do it," so that's the necessity. The fact is, what I do and what you see is moments, fragments, that I record with my video camera as life goes on, continues. The mystery remains. Why do I tape these minutes and not the rest of the day? That's the beauty of life, that we keep going and no explanations are really needed. Explanation is only part of the game. Nevertheless, can you describe for us the making of the films and more specifically, why with the argentic reel, the silver reel films, sometimes you are waiting a very long time before editing the pictures and the reels.
I will start with the end part. That when I was working with film, using my bullets, usually I waited for a long time to edit, to do something with that material. I don't know why. I was just collecting more and more until the moment came when I felt I had, like it began to fall into certain thematic blocks, and I began editing and issuing in different volumes. In video, I do it almost immediately. Very often, when I was for 1 year, you know, I had this 365-day project, which you can see in the museum. And very much of it was done the same and put on the website the same day. So it was immediately. So my method sort of changed a little bit. So, yeah. Now, going to why I record with my camera, what I record, that's where the conflict. Okay, that's where I really tried to understand and invent reasons, and those reasons, what I tell to people, keep changing. But one thing I know that, okay, I'm walking through my life with my camera, always my camera with me. The day has 24 hours, every hour has 60 minutes, every minute 60 seconds. Then the day ends and I see that I had only maybe 3 minutes of film. Why, what happened to all the other minutes? That means there was a reason, some reason just to pick up some specific moments. But there was a reason. Now, what was that reason? That I suddenly felt I have to take my camera and record those moments. Okay, it's me. So it's totality of me that somehow there was a moment when from that totality of me, something was triggered there. And I had from what was in front of me, around me, that there was a need which is not rational at all, not calculated, not planned, to take the camera and record that moment. So after many answers that I had to why I did it, that latest now, I think that what I really record, what I'm after, is like some essential, universal moments of my contemporaries, humanity today. Not necessarily when I film a certain situation that is there, and I have to really record this. Something in it that connected with all my past, that I maybe went through a very similar situation, but also a situation that all of us go through in some slightly maybe different way, but there is something essential, some essential moment of how humans behave, react in certain situations. But then there is another little complication that for some reason I block out huge areas of human experience or what's happening around me, and I choose my choice. Usually I go after like celebrations, some moments of like happiness, joy, friends, friendship, and I block out completely everything else. So, but I guess that's how I am. So in any case, yeah.
But sometimes you wait for a very long time to consider these moments again and edit them.
Yeah, because you see, I take or film a certain situation, and then I'm not sometimes not have. I did not really get to the essence of what's all about, how I really see it or feel like I failed, or it was slightly wrong moment for that, and so I go again, do it again in maybe a year later or 2 or 10 years later. There is the same thing happens. So I try again to get this time closer. Maybe I will catch it, really catch it this time the way the very essence of it. So I keep coming back very often to the same situations, the same kind of similar moments, hoping really that they're fragile, because what I'm dealing with in my films are not huge, some events, but very small, daily, almost invisible events, and that's where it becomes very, very difficult, fragile, to really just evaporate before you catch that moment. So it's a big challenge. I'm not really answering directly in 100% way you ask.
Yes, you do, because I just understand that you are considering life as it is already poetry, meaning in life you are seeing the rhymes and the correspondences and the vibrations. And
Yes, because maybe, okay, I'm trying to get to that essence, but I think at the same time, maybe it's there. I see that the moment is really there the way I see, but what I'm missing there, what I want to put it on, of myself into it, you see. And that's what was at the beginning of my bollocks of filming, when I kept like feeling that I'm failing because the reality, the what is there in front of the lens, I caught it, the camera recorded it, but where is me? Where is that thing that I felt when I was looking at it before I pressed the button of the camera? Like the challenge was to, by restructuring, by filming it in the, not continuously, but by single frames, like or jazz musician with single notes creates, melodies. To restructure and that way to put my own temperament into it, so that now the result, the images, is what I saw and how, why I feel myself is there too, and then I'm happy. So it's putting the questions, maybe putting the two together, the reality and myself. So of course that means that I'm changing it drastically, and therefore nothing is true in my films.
You are a great observer of what the tools, the effects of the tools on the human minds and spirits and behaviors. For example, in the middle of the 60s, you wrote that the stroboscope, the invention of the stroboscope, was a mutation, and that now we are flickers, we are human flickers. So we are in a way photographs. And so I was wondering if you are a kind of anthropologist for the images, you can describe the changes in the human spirit from the 60s to our present, because the tools as
I think that to describe, I very often call myself anthropologist, but I think that stroboscope and all the tools of making images are only a result. Once those instruments are there, of course they change reality. But I think before that, those instruments, strobe came in already when in our minds, and we had already changed, and the reality around us had changed, and then we just maybe there is Marshall, like Ficunam, somewhere there is in the back. Then suddenly we have that instrument produced, but that reality is already in existence. So that the new today the computers, okay, it's a lot of changing, every year, bringing out a new edition of computer or other instrument or tool is very much business oriented because it sells, so you have to change something so that people will buy a new version. But also at the same time, there is a necessity. Those instruments change our minds, how we think, how we see, how we behave, and we already demand, we need that. It's not that we change because it's there and that affects and we change. It's very often, I would say almost 100%, we need those new technologies, those instruments, and we create, those are our extensions, and as we move forward. So, of course, it's mutual, it affects us as we move forward, but at the same time, we demand, we need it, we invent, and we struggle to invent because we need some plant growing through, and there are obstructions, and the plant tries to get somehow to grow out.
Good. So maybe now there are questions in the audience for Jonas.
I have a question for you. How many of you understand English? Could you live? Okay, so we are not talking into the emptiness. Thank you. Oh, I see you have. Oh, I did not know. Oh, I see technology. I did not know that. Okay.
So a question in English or in Spanish or in Lithuanian or in images?
Buenos días, señor Mekas, gracias. Sí. Gracias por estar aquí, por venir a México. Mi pregunta es muy general, si puede hablar sobre el origen de Anthology Film Archives, cómo se ponen de acuerdo entre ustedes y si ese proyecto archivístico no resultó ser...
Creo que va a tener que repetir la pregunta.
O si quieren, hago la pregunta en inglés, ya que aquí todos somos bien... Pues,
I can hear you.
si puede hablar sobre cómo empieza el proyecto de Anthology Film Archives y si ese proyecto significó rivalidad, lo veían como competencia a los archivos más establecidos de Estados Unidos, porque hasta donde sabemos Anthology era para proyectos, para películas experimentales que no habían encontrado un lugar en los archivos establecidos. Entonces, ¿cómo reaccionaron los otros archivos cuando ustedes empezaron ya a funcionar cuidando sus propios materiales?
To really answer this question, to really, well, it's enough, no, that's long. Okay, to answer this question, of course, I would have to write a book, but I will be very brief because the question goes into many directions. Anthology, very simple, Anthology Film Archives was created mainly to select a body of works that would represent, in the first place, the independence, the avant-garde, what was created until then, with some examples of the classical cinema, and see also that those selected works are preserved for posterity, because when Anthology Film Archives came into existence in 1970, already there was like 40 years of the independent avant-garde experimental cinema in the United States. And much of it was already fading and needed immediate preservation work in order to protect for the future works that we admired and represented, stages of development in cinema. That was, and make it available to the people. That was basically why Anthology Film Archives was created. And since no other archive was doing it, we were the only ones who were doing it. All other archives loved us, and we were all in good relations. There was no competition, no rivalry. We were always in very good relations with all the archives in the world.
Hola. Bueno, mi pregunta es, ¿se le llama cine independiente? ¿Se le llama cine avant-garde o cine experimental? Mi pregunta es quizá un poco amplia, pero ¿independiente de qué? ¿Qué es lo que, o sea, cuál es el tipo de cine que es la contratesis de lo que le gusta a Jonas Mekas?
I used those terms several times on this during my stay in Mexico City, but those are not my terms. I don't like those terms at all, like independent. Spielberg is more independent. He can do whatever he wants, and we cannot. Bratislava never really had to teach in universities and look for jobs, and he was not free, not really. So that term is meaningless. And experimental is even more meaningless. No filmmaker, I don't know a single filmmaker who experiments. We do what we do, we just do it. Or a painter, just paint. We don't experiment. Artists do not experiment. Scientists experiment. So those terms have been invented by the press, by some, I would almost call primitive film historians, because they need somehow all, I would say, we are filmmakers. We make films. Like there are writers, they write. But in literature, there is a novelistic cinema, there is prose, there is poetry, and there are different varieties of poetry, and we have terms to this lyrical poem, there is a sonnet, there is a haiku. In cinema, we are writing, for people who write in cinema, we have no tools, no system yet. It's so primitive. All writing on cinema I find childish, primitive. The division is only between commercial and not commercial. It's stupid. We have to begin to talk about cinema in terms of different forms of cinema. Then within those forms, there are different, again, genres. Different. It is how we discuss cinema is still on a beginning primitive stage. So that's why those terms are still dominating the field, the cinema, and the people get confused by this guy is an experimental filmmaker. No, this guy is a filmmaker, makes films. Maybe not a narrative film, makes maybe non-narrative film. Now, what kind of narrative film? Then we go, again, we go into more details. Cinema is cinema, a filmmaker is a filmmaker. No experimental. But I have to add a footnote. Certain those terms have been used for so long that some areas of cinema are if we say French avant-garde film, German avant-garde film, you are talking more or less about like the 20s here, because the terms were used. So we inherited them, we sometimes we referred to them, we were forced to use them to understand, because we have no other tools yet, because we are on such primitive level then. That's my opinion.
La pregunta es, tiene que ver con capturar esos momentos que son muy volátiles, cuando uno está en una situación y ve un momento que está escapándose y uno lo filma. Cuando Jonas Mekas tiene éxito en filmar ese momento, ¿qué sucede con la memoria de Jonas Mekas de ese momento?
All I can say to that question is that when I review later my footage, I remember the moment, the circumstances, but when I see the footage, because of course I remember the circumstances, the place, the moment, that's it. Those are moments recorded, they are very real, they are there on a piece of film or video. The image is a real reality to which I see when I project. And of course it brings back memories, that's unavoidable, that's simple and real and human. It's very normal that you remember the moment when you see it again. I have nothing but to add to that.
Senor Mekas, whom today is inspiring you and moving you in filmmaking and moving images?
All filmmakers from all countries, all genres, all forms, all countries, all periods. They all inspire me, and of course one does not make films because some films inspire you, but we are made up of, I listen to music, I read books, I communicate with friends. So we are made up with all those influences, and I'm very easy to influence, and we all are. And, the influence is, I read Andre Reed wrote a very nice essay on influence, because very often we sometimes talk about influence like something negative, but he just influence, now he's like the second water. There was somebody who did it better and influenced this person. But really the influence is where you find like somebody else you meet and you see and you see that this person did something in what you are trying to do and doing, and that you are not alone. There is like a friendship so it's something that then strengthens your own position, your own direction of wanting to continue, because I'm okay, because there are others who are doing also working the same, so I'm not alone. So, yes, so I'm part of a big family.
Mr. Mekas, hi. Voy a hacer la pregunta. Yo quería... Mr. Mekas, yo quiero saber si usted puede hacer algunos comentarios acerca de la ley de obscenidad en los Estados Unidos.
I don't follow it. I cannot make. I cannot say. I'm out. That's not my field. I'm not in the I'm not studying obscenity, I'm not following it, I'm not in it. And it's a subject that, it's like politics. I'm out of it. I'm not, I cannot. And I don't even know what obscenity today, what that term mean. And we used to know when obscenity was introduced to in New York, in the United States, to, like, if you want to show a film, you have to give it, you have to get a license from the city, from a certain group, little committee of some, usually old people who look at your work and decide, no, this film cannot be shown, or you have to cut out that part and you can show. So we knew that's what obscenity is. That, today one does not know anymore, because anybody can do what they want, and doesn't, it's obscenity. Is it restricted only to sex, or is it also part of politics? I don't know. There is more obscenity, I would say, than in politics than in sex. I'm out of it.
Señor Mekas, gracias por estar aquí, apreciamos su visita, y de los maravillosos momentos que seguramente ha visto durante su vida, ¿cuál ha sido uno de estos realmente memorable, pero que no haya podido filmar? ¿Podría narrarlo? Y aprovechando que está aquí, que seguramente no podré verlo tal vez en mucho tiempo, quisiera preguntarle como cineasta, ¿qué es para usted el tiempo? Esas dos preguntas.
I have caught on film only 1/1,000,000th part of my life. So the rest, all my life except 1/1,000,000th of my life maybe has not been filmed. So my life has been full of wonderful moments. Already some wonderful moments I experienced here in Mexico City. So there is endless. And time, of course. Time, and what was time? We have 7 minutes to 2. Okay?
Bueno, buenas tardes. Mi pregunta va hacia, ¿qué les podría decir? Bueno, he hecho mucho aquí en el auditorio. Yo creo que hay muchas personas que están empezando en el mundo del cortometraje, ¿no? Del cine. ¿Qué les podría decir, más bien, qué nos podría decir a nosotros? Algo esencial que tengamos que saber para empezar en este mundo. Y también otra parte, ¿qué piensa acerca de los sueños? No sé, tengo un afán como tipo obsesión con los desdoblamientos en el sueño. ¿Cree que son pura falacia o en realidad sí los ha llevado a cabo en alguna de sus películas?
I will start with the second. To answer it, read Freud and Jung. That's enough. That's more. I'm not authoritarian. As far as the first one, about the shorts, depends on, are you making shorts for men or for women? What material to use? What are you interested in? I mean, summer, for what kind of weather? that term, as you can see from what I said, is to me is I always hate short. Depends what you want to do. You want to tell a story, or you want to write a poem, or I mean, there is no rule, no restriction, and we are all we choose what we usually depends on the subject. Subject dictates the form, and then there is the tool involved, the instrument. But the subject usually dictates the form. Which, are you telling a story? Then of course you need more time. It could be 70 minutes, could be 5 hours, or you just have some small moment, maybe the thing, even in cinema, it's a short story, then of course it takes fewer minutes. But one should not be, because some television formats require 27, I will reduce my film to 27. That's idiotic. If a film requires 32, make 32 minutes. If 37, make 37. If it's 10, make 10. It depends on what. That's how my thinking goes.
Yeah, Mr. Mekas, you said you are not an experimentalist, but it seems that you started a genre, which is the diary, the filmed diary. Not many people before you did that, so you were experimenting with a new genre, I think. In English? Spanish or Español?
I was listening in Spanish.
En español. En inglés. Okay, continúo. You reject the term experimental, but I think that you were a pioneer in a genre, which is the filmed diary. Not many people before you did that.
I'm not a pioneer. I'm not a pioneer in any way. When I came to New York in 1949, in the United States already, just if we talk about the United States, forgetting what happened in Europe between 1910 and 49, there was already a huge body of work that was not Hollywood. It was already various poetic forms that being developed by Kenneth Anger and by Sidney Peterson, by a good Gregory Markoppel, and by a good number of, there was a body of work. So when it's almost insulting to me when, or stupid really, when some people say that, Jonas is, the grandfather or father, of American avant-garde. That's stupid, because I'm their child. I'm only continuing what they did and what others did in Europe before that, in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, etc. I'm just continuation, but just.
Okay, I don't mind. Okay, no, I understand. Now, you were using a small format camera, which was at the Bolex, and perhaps you also used Super 8 or 8 millimeter. That allowed you to be closer to what you were filming, to do it in a more easy way to grasp these moments. Now, I hear that you are using video today. You are using a video camera.
Which is bigger than my film camera.
Okay, my point is this. You can see that most of the people here or everywhere in these middle-class environments have these cell phones that can also record video or take photographs. Do you think that this genre, which you did not invent, okay, I agree, is going any further with the possibility of everybody having a video camera or perhaps even a chip inserted in their brains and record not 1 millionth of their lives, but their whole lives? I mean, we are not very far from that. What do you think is the future of this genre, of the film diary?
The future is never predictable. No, I do not know what will happen in the future. All I know that everybody is now has a moving image camera, and this auditorium, everybody has, and we all are making recordings of reality around us for different reasons. And what is a diary? I mean, the diary is a moment, recorded moment of the present. So we all do that, and unless things like turn badly in the world and dictators take over, and sort of we need to, I don't know, for politics and developments of societies and dictatorships that are unpredictable. They sometimes come when nobody expects them. So, and then everything will be forbidden. And you won't be able to take anything, or you will be given, dictators. That happens, and there are still countries like that today also. So the future is very unpredictable. And I'm not a prophet. But just what we can see that for at least 5-10 years we can foresee that it will still go. There will be new editions of all technologies that you have in your pockets, and they will be getting still maybe smaller and more complicated and more subtle. That everybody is aware of that, everybody knows that. You don't have to be a prophet, to predict that. And the implanting, when Salvador Dali was always talking about implanting, having a camera in his side, and that's all the dream of some, And actually today, there are already experiments and people who walk with cameras in their brains. So it's nothing new.
Can I refine the question, please?
Hola.
Let's change to that side.
Hola. Hace unos momentos estaba diciendo que solamente se queda satisfecho cuando logra captar la realidad y su sentir. ¿Cómo sabe que su sentir está captado?
I do not know. End of answer.
Hola, señor Mekas, es un gusto tenerlo entre nosotros. Hace un momento usted decía que usted se siente fuera de la política, sin embargo, uno podría hacer una lectura política de sus películas en cuanto a búsqueda de la belleza. Esa sería una pregunta. Y la segunda, ¿cuál es su concepto de politopía?
In my films, very often in some of the films, you can find a title that says, "This is a political film." But you see, and that's my polemics with what is known and practiced today as politics and politicians and even some artists, some filmmakers. Those that identify politics with political parties. To me, politics is what, in a subtle way, with no rhetorics and no force, change the style, the way of living for the way I see for good. Like, okay, my examples of politics, like politics, Buckminster Fuller. Now, he affected the way we live, the way we build our how we surround ourselves. That I consider positive politics. The beat generation, I think, affected us also. Those are positive politics. Even Fluxus, to me, is part of positive politics, because there is some humor and playfulness has been brought to consciousness that we lack in arts and in life. That's positive. And down the line, I think there are philosophers, there are poets, there are architects who change our life for good in a positive way, and that is why I said this is a political film. I had a long running argument with Godard in that area.
Sí, Maestro Mekas.
And too much art, I find when I go into the surveys, new art today in general is devoted to the black, dark part of humanity, horrors, and with, I think it's much too much and neglecting the subtle, invisible part of humanity, of our lives that has to do with, okay, celebration and happiness.
Okay. Sí, Maestro Mekas, primeramente es un placer que esté aquí compartiendo su experiencia con nosotros, y un poco retomando la segunda pregunta del compañero que acaba de preguntarle, con respecto al nombre de esta mesa, inventando la felicidad, creando la politopía. ¿Cuál es su concepto de politopía?
I do not know that term. Can you? I really.
That's me who suggested. Just to say that Jonas really is, for me, is the contrary of utopia, will never exist. He made so many. I mean, he made concrete so many ways to understand the world, to understand our own feelings, to understand the others, and to live simply. So, in the political tradition, utopia is always like the ultimate state, but we never will reach it. So it's much better to have polytopia, you know.
Oh, are we talking about utopia? Then I will tell you what I think about utopia, if that is polytopia. It's like this. Some individuals come up with some great idea. Good for how to make humanity like to have an ideal system that everybody would be happy. And they think, they get themselves or somebody else get so obsessed with that idea that they really think that's really good idea and everybody should really accept that idea and that you should live it that way. Now, some people don't like that. So then the idea is being, then they get a gun to push the idea. Now the gun does not always work. Then they get a tank. You really have, this is the system that will be utopian. Now, if that does not work, as we have seen in the 20th century, doesn't always work, even with tanks. So there's still atom bomb. That may do the trick. So, utopia. I believe only in personal utopia, where you try to make yourself better. Yourself, your own, how you live, how you behave, how you, in your small circle, in just family, little village, little community. That's the only utopia I believe. I do not believe in universal utopias. That we are, that's what we really are today in politics. Then democracy should be universal utopia. It's baloney. There is no, democracy is not the answer to the whole world, and etc., etc. We are in very dangerous situation. So back to the individual, back to the person. That's where utopia, the only utopia that can be.
Bueno, a mí me gustaría preguntar que al principio usted habló de la necesidad. A mí me gustaría saber qué imagen o qué momento fue el que dijo, yo tengo la necesidad de grabar este momento. ¿Qué lo inspiró a ser cineasta, pues? ¿Qué imagen?
At the beginning of this discussion, I already tried to find an answer to that question. Why do I do what I do? And I really have no answers. And I always like in the arts, why one does this or that, why one sings or dances. I always keep going back to Greeks, to the muses. That to Greeks it was, I already told this to some of you before. It was much simpler. The muse enters you maybe at your birth, and in shamanism, these shamans, and it could be later, but at your birth, and you have no choice. You will be danced. And if you then don't dance, you will self-destroy yourself. You will have a nervous wreck. You will go crazy. You cannot go against the wish of muses, or what you are made up, what you are. So you dance, or you sing, or you make films. No choice, absolutely no choice. The other choices end up in madhouse.
Muchísimas gracias. Vamos a concluir esta plática. Queremos agradecer muchísimo a Nicole Brené por la introducción. Muchas gracias. Quiero agradecer también a Eva San Giorgi y a Amanda de la Garza, también a María Inés Rodríguez por hacer posible esta plática. Sin ellas, la verdad es que no tendríamos el paquete completo de Jonas Mekas